Hi, it's story time again. This is episode 5 of my trip to Europe this past summer. This is going to be from Milano to Livorno. So let's just get to it. Do a screen share here. Okay, let's size that on there. Milano to Livorno. This was a lot of fun. This again is the overall map of where I went during that 3 months. Of course, we started up here, episode 1, 2, 3. Barcelona was its own episode along the French Riviera. This episode is going to be in this part of northern Italy, and we're going to go down to here, down to Livorno. But most of this is up here in northern Italy. And this is an enlargement. This is Milano down here. And you can see the scale of miles here, 5 miles. It's not a huge area, but big enough. If this is 5 miles, look at the size of this lake. From Milano, I went to Desenzano, which is a town with a stop on the railroad here. I took the train here to Desenzano, and I biked up to this point, and from about here, I took the ferry up to Riva del Garda, which is a town up here, and then I took a bike along really nice bikeway up to Trento, where my friend Cinzia lives. I stayed several days with Cinzia, uh, and we did a little adventuring up here as well. And then when I left Trento, I came back down Lago Garda, back to Desenzano, to Brescia, and then I took the train along this other lake here, a smaller lake. These are glacial lakes, and took the train up to about this point here, and then I took a bus up to Aprica Pass right here. This is up in elevation. Had myself let out of the bus. There's a town up here, a ski place, and then I did a big downhill on my bicycle down here to the Fiume Adda. This is a major important river up here, and biked along the river up to the northern end of Lago Como, and biked all along here. Again, all the orange is bike riding. And I spent some time on Lago Como to Lecco here, and then to Bergamo, where I stayed with some friends in Bergamo. We did an outing up here into the mountains. Awesome. And after several days, back to Milano, and then I went down to left Milano, and then down just a short visit to Cinque Terre, and then to Livorno. I stayed the night in Livorno, and took a ferry the next day to Corsica. So Corsica will be the next episode, but this is what we're going to be looking at today. So this is what train station looks like. Milano. I'm arriving. Got my bike here. I'm ready to go. Actually, not very far, because I'm just going to go to another place in the train station and take a train to Desenzano. But this is the Milano train station. This is only a very small part of it. It's a pretty busy place, the Milano train station. Here's another view of the train station. I'm waiting to board the train. You can see there's a lot of English. English is kind of all over the place. Here's my bike, and these are people who are waiting for the train. And you can take what you can see here and multiply that times about 10 or 12. And that's the train station in Milano. Here's another map. It shows what we looked at before, but this is more a physical map. It shows the mountains here, it shows the rivers, it shows the lakes. Where Milano is located, and this part of northern Italy, this is the Po Valley, the Po River Valley, and it's all very flat. This is flat here, and this is where the mountains start to rise up. And I mentioned this in a previous episode. Many millions of years ago, Italy was kind of cruising around on its own. We know about plate tectonics. Different parts of the Earth's crust are moving around, and sometimes they bash into each other. They cause ocean trenches. Our very own fault line off the coast here in the Northwest is part of that whole. Some of them go into each other, some go under, some go over, some scrape along each other and cause earthquakes, volcanoes. So Italy was its own chunk of Earth crust, and it plowed into southern Europe many millions of years ago, and it raised up the Alps. Much of the Alps are limestone. When the 300 or 400 years ago, people up in the Alps started seeing fossils that were from marine creatures. They said, how did these marine fossils arrive up here to a point well over 4,000 meters above sea level? Well, that was a pretty big discovery, but you can go on YouTube and find out about that. This is not so much a geology lesson. So I went from Milano over here to Desenzano. This first picture I'm going to show, these X's kind of give us a little bit of orientation. This is where I spent my first night. I just was late in the day and I found a really nice place to camp out. And then the next day I went up to Riva del Garda on the ferry, and then I biked up here to Trento. We'll see this map several times during the course of this slideshow because it's just so good to see the orientation where we are. This is the Adda River up here. This is Lago Como way over here, and these are all mountains. And we remembered the scale from here to here. That distance right there is probably about 5 or 6 miles right there. So this is where I stayed the night. I just found it. It was getting late in the day. It was getting almost dark, and I was able to really stretch out my ropes to hang my hammock underneath these olive trees right here. And what a view that I had. There was also a thunderstorm that night. I had to hang onto my tarp, which I had over my hammock, and managed to stay pretty much dry. It was windy, there was lightning, it came down. It was quite a night. And this is uh, a view a little bit further along in the morning. I was on my way north towards Trento, and I had this view at this one point. This is Lago Garda right here, and this rectangle is where I camped out the night before. Wow, it was a really nice place. So give us a little bit of orientation. A little bit further along, I was still biking at this point, but I realized giving the time, I was going to have to make it up to Trento that day, and I wasn't going to do it with a bicycle, so I ended up taking the ferry. But these lakes are on a latitude something like Kansas or Nebraska, and you have these Canary Island date palms growing up here. It's really quite remarkable, the climate. Of course, overall, at the same latitude, Europe is much more moderate in temperature than much of the United States. Um, uh, you even find some palm trees up in London, and London is like Anchorage, Alaska. So you've got the Gulf Stream Hopefully that continues to function, maybe not with climate change. But I was just continuously just amazed at Canary Island date palms. They take a freeze. They're not coconut trees, but they grow about as far north as the Oregon border with California. You find some of these in Brookings. So, but these are a lot further north than Brookings right here. So, I made my way to this one town, and when I decided I was going to take the ferry, I had a little bit of time before the ferry was scheduled to take off. So I biked around and I saw this big field right here, and I thought, I'm getting my frisbee out and just throw the frisbee. There was nobody there to throw it with, but I like to just throw the frisbee, throw it, walk up to the frisbee, throw it again. Well, I threw it a few times and these kids came out, these Italian kids. So I did a little impromptu frisbee clinic. And a couple of these kids could actually throw the frisbee pretty well. And I talked with their mom. This is her mom kind of watching over here. And she said that a couple of the kids had seen a frisbee before, and they were really having a good time. So I enjoyed doing a little frisbee clinic. And of course, there's the frisbee right there. So this is what the ferry looks like. This is not a big ferry. You're not going to put a car on here, but you can put a bicycle on here. This was really exciting. Garda is a lake 70, 80 miles long. These are glacial lakes. Thousands of years ago, 8, 10, 12, 15,000 years ago, this area was covered in ice, just like parts of the United States were covered with ice, the northern reaches. So they're narrow and they're deep. And this is the ferry right here. And it's just beautiful. The southern end of the lake, you're just getting into the mountains, and the further north you go on the lake, the higher the mountains are. So this is just a little bit further up the lake. You just sit down on the ferry and just enjoy the scenery. This is just in these towns that you stop in to pick up passengers, to let off passengers, just beautiful. I love this area so much. Here's the cliffs getting even higher. There's a road along here. You can ride a bicycle, and I was going, God, I'd sure like to ride a bike. But I just didn't have time to do that. So I had my picture taken here. It was kind of cool that day. And this is further towards the north end of the lake. And this is kite surfing is what this is right here. But what I took the picture for is this is a cantilevered bikeway along the road. The road is up here, but the authorities have built this bikeway that's just one of the most famous bike places in Europe. It's cantilevered out from the cliff, and you can walk, you can ride a bike. I didn't do that because I missed that part of the route because I was on the ferry instead. But I've seen videos of this, and when I saw it, I knew it was up here somewhere, but I didn't know exactly where it was. And this is it right here. It only goes for about 5 or 6 kilometers. It cost a bundle to do this. The hope is at some point to have a bikeway that goes all the way around Lago Garda. That would be a lot, and this is certainly extremely spectacular right here. I did see people up here on bikes and people walking, and I'm going, oh, I wish I was doing that too, but I could see it from down here. So the previous photo was just right along here. That's where that bikeway is right there. These mountains are what you saw. And it looks different on this side of the lake because this is the province of Lombardia, and this is this is Trentino over on this side, but this is Riva del Garda here, and then this would be Trento up here. So This is Riva del Garda, and this is looking south at this point. Got mountains on this side, mountains on this side. There is a bikeway cut into the cliff up here. Lots of bicycle tourism up here. There's just bicycles everywhere. It's really nice. So I had to go up here on a bicycle because when I saw this from down here on the ferry, I looked up here and I saw bikes up there and I said, I got to go up there no matter what. So I was able to stash my gear at a tourist information kiosk. A woman there said she would look after it for me, and because I wouldn't have gone up here with all that gear because it's steep. I didn't go very far. You could go a number of kilometers along here in and out. What a view! But I did enough that I had a good experience, and then I had to hustle back. This is Riva del Garda. This is the ferry here, and that bike that I just pictured just before was kind of going up this way, up this way. And again, here's a Canary Island date palm. These are windmill palms here. They're a much more hardy variety of palm trees. But this is just the Lungo Lago. This is just the area along the lake, and there's a lot of it there. There's a lot of people visit these lakes because they're so beautiful, and these towns along the lake are just so beautiful. But I am having to go up slope to Trento. Trento's probably about 40 or 50 kilometers from here, and it's a slight uphill the whole time. And fortunately, there's a bikeway that goes up to Trento, and this is it. This vineyards over here. If you can just imagine, this is the same geological kind of formation as we saw along the lake. Imagine there could be a lake right here, and this is what you are looking up at. That's what we were looking at from the ferry. So you have this wall of mountains all the way up to Trento. And then here's another view. There are other people on this bikeway. It's a popular place to go. Look at this vineyard. This is probably something on the order of 1,000 meters, 3,000 feet above the valley right here. It's just spectacular. And I did make it to Trento, and I found my friend Cinzia's place. And I was out later before she came home. Actually, I found her place, but she wasn't there. So I went out bike riding some more. This is Centro. This is the center of Trento right here. And this is there are some bikeways in Trento. This is these ducks were going across the bikeway. This is urban Trento, not a big city. I think 150, 200,000 people, something like that. There's some universities there, surrounded by mountains, of course. And speaking of mountains, my friend Cinzia and she took me up to this place here. We hiked a good part of the way to get up to, this is a part of a mountain area called the Dolomiti, the Dolomites, limestone, of course. And this is just absolutely just as spectacular as it can be. Just beyond this fence, it drops down very steeply for a long ways right here. These peaks right here, probably 3,000 meters, something like that, about 9,000 feet above sea level. So this isn't the highest mountains, but they are pretty awesome, pretty spectacular. And we also took a look at this small lake on our way back to Trento. It's just so pretty. I'm only showing a few of the photos. It's just so pretty, these mountains. So just a little idea. This is my clothes out to dry at Cinzia's place. And this is looking out her kind of back door. Of course, she lives in an apartment. Somebody actually has a little bit of a garden back here. But of course, residential living is a good deal more dense. I didn't really see very much suburbia in Trento. So had a nice several days in Trento, and went one day with Cinzia and her daughter Violema right here, Cinzia Violema, and there's this huge kind of a flea market garage sale. It goes on for blocks and blocks and blocks, and it was just fun just walking around. You can see this kind of probably a little bit more upscale than a lot of garage sales you see here. I'm sure some of this stuff here, is it'd probably be a couple hundred years old. Some of it looking pretty garage sale like, but some of this metalworking and antiques and stuff. It was a lot of fun just to wander around there. And they also were having a festival in Trento that weekend that I was there. So there was a lot going on out in the streets. This is a group of kids, not really ballet, but kind of modern dance, and all these people watching. There were just these different attractions around that part of Trento. There was music, there was art, there was dance, there was food. It was a lot of fun. Good timing that I was there. This is a near downtown street, Violema, and there's Cinzia. You'll notice that this is pretty much a car-free street. You see a lot more car-free, low cars or no cars in Europe, as I've commented before. One of the things I like so much about Europe is that the cities are not all overrun by cars. And of course, you see this sign right here, cannabis. I'm not really super clear. To some degree, cannabis is decriminalized in Italy, but you won't go in here and buy some pot that's gonna make you melt into a couch. I think it may be more medicinal and very weak. Their beer is weak too. Italian beer is very weak. You can drink a lot of Italian beer without wobbling. And I think their pot is a little bit the same way. I think you can have a small amount in possession, but this isn't like a cannabis shop in Oregon where you can, boy, I'd be afraid to smoke anything out of one of those shops. It's probably just too strong, but that's there in Trento. So this is another street view. This is just what a lot of downtown Trento looks like. These beautiful old buildings, nicely maintained. You see sidewalk cafe, people are out walking. There's a car down there. A lot of these areas, you might be able to drive a car in there if you lived in this area, but you'd have to go real slow, and you don't see really very many cars. It's bikes, it's pedestrians. This is just so humane, really, and this is very common all over Europe and other places in Europe as well, all over Italy and Europe. This is another part of the downtown Centro area. Again, sidewalk cafes, and I just love the architecture, the balconies. People are living up here, so it is I enjoyed my visit to Trento. And here's Cinzia, and this is what it's like walking up the steps. She rents, it's a small place where she lives. And I would see Cinzia again because she spends her summer times in Sardinia. That's how I know Cinzia, because I met her in Sardinia 20 years ago in Calaganone. So I will see Cinzia again in Sardinia, but this is going down to the street right here because it's time to head south again because I've got more places I need to see. But this is the same bikeway, and I'm going south. I'm going downhill, which makes a big difference. It's not steep, but it's quite a long ways. This is that same cliff. Um, it's just gorgeous. And these, of course, vineyards here. I just stopped to take a picture. This goes on for 25 or 30 kilometers. And there's so much bike riding there. This is a bike riding kind of cafe restaurant. You can see all the bicycles here, and these are all olive trees. Really, really nice. It's just such an enjoyable way to travel with a bicycle. And here's my bike. And this is once again at Riva del Garda. I've been here before. We saw some pictures before. And actually, now that I see, this is where that bike area, that bike path kind of chopped out of the cliff. That's what that is right there. Lots of people sailboarding and windsurfing. There's a nice breeze here. And this is looking south, and the lake is long enough that you can't actually see the far end of it. It's a good uh, 60, 70 miles down to the far end of the lake. You can't see that far because of can't see the other shore because of the curvature of the earth. So I am about ready to take the ferry. I've got a little time to use up. This is a nice little grassy beach there in Riva del Garda. Look at all these windmill palms and just a lot of people enjoying it. These public places, there's a bikeway along here. It's just really very, very pleasant. Just enjoy. This is one of the larger ferries. Actually, this one, you could put a few cars in this ferry, but there weren't any cars. There are lots of people on bicycles. So this is headed back to Desenzano. And this is on the ferry. It's about ready to dock. And there are organized bike tours. A lot of these people are on a bike tour. And a few people are doing their own bike riding. I'm just doing my bike ride by myself. But what a fun thing to do, to go with a bunch of people and do all this nice bike riding. I could enjoy that too. So I made it back to Desenzano, and I stayed a night there in a campground in Desenzano. But I had time to just look around a little bit more. Desenzano, all these small towns along the lake have just got beautiful areas for people to walk. Of course, there's shops where you can spend a lot of money. These are tourist destinations, really nicely done. You see here, there's hardly any cars. This is actually a car-free area. You can find some cars down here, but that's what people like so much, is to come to a place where it's quiet and you can talk with people and you don't have to think about avoiding cars. It's just so pleasant. And of course, some more Canary Island date palms. And this is where I stayed. There weren't very many appropriate trees in this campground, but I did find these trees. And it's not even actually so much a part of the campground, but the guy who owned the campground said, sure, you can hang your hammock there. I even had a picnic table. The lake is just over here, and these are oleanders. You see big oleanders growing here because, of course, you don't get a bad freeze. I'm sure it can get down to, in Fahrenheit, I'm sure it can get down to 15 or 20, every quite a number of years. But these lakes create something of a microclimate, and it's unusually mild for that kind of a latitude. So I went into Desenzano that evening. I think it was maybe here. I had a pizza at one of these places here, a pizza and a beer, and talked with some people who were also doing the same. I think they were from England, had a nice chat. Just this warm, people out walking. This is just such a pleasant place to be. That's why people come to a place like this for vacation. It's just so nice and well taken care of. So let's yeah, okay. Take a look at this. So this is Desenzano del Garda right here. Those previous pictures in the evening there. I took a train, and that lake we just saw is right along here. This is the train. The train's going up this valley, and then I take a bus up to here because the train ends. It gets too steep for the train. So let's just kind of go back a couple pictures. That's that lake that you see from the train. Had to get off the train. They were doing some track work. Put my bike and passengers also on a bus. Went for a while on the bus and then got back on the train. So this is that lake. This is not as large as Garda or Como, but it's still a pretty big lake. And I'm going in this direction here. And this is another picture of that lake. So pretty. And then I came to this small town where the train ended, and there was a bus stop there, and I had to wait. Fortunately, there was a bus that was going up higher in elevation, that was going towards up over a divide from one watershed to another. I'd be going up to this pass, and then I'd be biking down that pass to Fiume Adda, the Adda River Valley, where I would be doing some bike riding, the Valtellina Valley here. So once again, let's check this map. And that previous photo would be somewhere down in here where I'm catching the bus, and the bus takes me up here to Alpaca, uh, this pass here where this X is right here. And the view from there, that's what the view is. This is the Adda River Valley right here. I'd be going down into this valley, and there's a bikeway in this valley. And then you go for another 50, 60 kilometers, and you come to the north end of Lago Como. And that's what the plan is. I'm doing bike riding all along here. And let's see, yeah, all along here, 50, 60 kilometers. And then this is Lago Como. So I come to the northern end of Lago Como, and I bike along this west side of the lake. And these are all mountains on both sides. We'll see right about here a Roman bridge, a bridge that was built 2,000 years ago. We'll see that here in just a second. But this is a long downhill. This was so much fun. This is what I did a number of times on my trip. Is I would have a the bus let me off at a high point so I could coast down. This, of course, easily 1,000 feet above the valley here. So I did another view here, that valley. So I'm going down the road. There was very little traffic. It was real easy going, and I'm on the brakes the whole time because I don't like to go fast. And I saw up ahead of me this old stone building, and I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I slowed down to take a closer look, and where I stopped, this guy was sitting in this chair. It's crazy. He was just kind of sitting in this chair, and he was and this means this is a ring the bell. That's what that means. Suonare. It means like ring the bell here. And I didn't ring it because it's just sort of like all of a sudden I didn't even know he was there until I stopped and looked, and this guy was sitting in this chair. Well, he lives in a nearby town, but he owns this property, and he was telling me the history of this place. This used to be on the border, with like Austria, and there were these old, hundreds of years old, 300 or 400 years old. He was telling me, the history of this place, and and he took me for a little short tour. This is what these are just it's like being in almost kind of like a fairyland right here. Nobody's living in these, but uh, I uh, I recognized these structures from a video I saw on YouTube. I swear, I said, I've seen this place before on a video on YouTube because this guy's got kind of a reputation. And this place has a little bit of a reputation. He was a totally nice guy, didn't do anything weird or anything, gave me a couple of apples, actually, but he kind of showed me around a little bit this place. And I very much enjoyed that. But then I had to continue on. I made it down to that valley, down into the valley of the Adda River. And this is part of the bikeway. This looks like a street. I imagine cars go here too, but it was pretty quiet. But this was part of the bikeway. I could be away from automobiles almost the entire way to Lago Como right here. So this is just when I came to that point where it was flat, and I would follow the signs and stay on this bikeway for really the rest of the day and a good part of the following day. I camped out. So there's picnic tables and places to relax along the way. This is actually Fiume Adda right here. So I was at this picnic table having some lunch, and these two women were walking by, and they stopped, and we chatted for a while. They lived in the nearby town. They kind of told me a little bit about the place. Really enjoyed having even my modest level of Italian, to be able to talk with people. The fellow in the previous pictures, all that, of course, was in Italian. And so we talked and had a nice visit. And I ended up spending the night there. This was not an official campground, but a hammock can allow you to camp out in discreet places. This was near the bikeway. There was no street, no houses anywhere close, but I was just as comfortable as I could be right here. And this is the river right here, the Adda. So I stayed the night there, and I continued on my way the next day. I just I just love the adventure of seeing what you're going to find. Here's my bike here. This right here is a hollowed out big log with geraniums growing in it. And what you see here is the town well right here, or actually a spring. It's more of a spring than a well. People, I'm sure, in the past would come here to get their water. And what you see here is the laundromat. In the past, before washing machines, this is where people would come and they'd wash their clothes. So this is a little bit of history right here. Everybody's got their washing machines now, so I don't think this gets used very much, but it's still there. And just look how nice and tidy that is. Um, I went into a little village near the bikeway just to poke around and see what was there. And I just love all this old woodworking. This is some kind of farm machinery of some kind. I don't know what they did with this. I'm not sure what it is, but you can see uh, these balconies and steps back here. I'm sure these buildings are hundreds of years old. I just love this kind of stuff, just right along the pathway for the bike. And I saw this balcony and all these flowers, just colorful. Um, and I saw cats. I saw other uh, uh, water sources. Heard church bells, clanging when the hour changes. I just love that. And then I didn't know I was going to be seeing this. This is a Roman bridge. This bridge is 2,000 years old right here. It just blew my mind when I saw this. I met a guy who lived nearby, a bike rider actually. He really had all the gear, really nice bike, and we talked up here for a while. He told me about this bridge. This is a picture from the top of the bridge looking down the river, you can see its mountains rising up on both sides of the river, and I'm getting closer to Lago Como as we go along. So that's the our next destination. Um, she's just beautiful. I had to find my way to the western side of the lake, and I ran into a couple of other people, a couple of Italians who were kind of looking to find their way too. So we biked along with each other for about an hour. We did some chatting too. That was pleasant. So now I am on the west side of Lago Como. This is the north end of the lake right here. And where I'd come from was up this way, up this valley here. So you can see these big mountains over here, just a little playground. I'm having some lunch right here. So a little further along, I just see these gated off. I would have given anything to be able to walk around in here, but there was a locked gate and you couldn't go in there. But at least I got a picture. So, but there's towns along the lake and there's a road along the lake. Not all of it is as beautiful as this. I mean, there's grocery stores and pharmacies and gas stations, all of that's along there too. But there's a lot of this kind of beautiful scenery. So by this time, I am along here. That previous photos would be right about here. The picnic table where I was would be up here. That's not so far. That's only about, maybe 15 or 18 miles along here. Good sized lake, but it's not as large as Garda is. So I have a destination. My destination is this town right here called Menaggio. And I'd seen videos of Menaggio. There's also a ferry that goes across the lake here. Uh, uh, there's Belaggio is here, and then there's Varenna. I've got the name wrong on that, but there's a place across the lake that is also a very popular location to go to because there are villas and gardens along the lake. That was one of the main reasons I wanted to go here, is to see these villas with their kind of formal Renaissance type gardens. Um, so this is a little bit of what the lungomare, literally along, the lungo lago along the lake, a promenade here in Menaggio right here. I just love this kind of public feature so much. Just look at this, all the flowers, some Canary Island date palms here. This is the other side of the lake. Got my bike here. People just like to be in a place like this. There's benches where you can sit, there's people sitting, and you can be out in the sun here if you want. You could probably go swimming if you wanted to also, but just such a pleasant place to be. I stayed in a campground, and the campground was right next to this cobbled beach. And I had biked all along here and around that point, and then way back here. So this is the west side of Lago Como. The water was very comfortable. By this time, it's getting into well into June. So there's people out on the beach. I was making some dinner here that particular day, and I really had to take a picture of what I had for dinner. Artichoke here, and these are chipotle, um, kind of balsamic vinegar and olive oil onions right here. Artichoke, and avocado. They don't grow avocado. They ought to be growing avocados in Italy, southern Italy, but they don't. But the local bread, tomatoes, pomodoro secchi, dried tomatoes, and olive oil. You can find all this stuff at any grocery store. It's just so, just love this kind of food. And pane, integrale, whole wheat bread. Had some cheese also. Of course, this is my frisbee right here, which doubled as a plate. So this is just so enjoyable just to sit there. Would have had a big beer with me right there and just sit there and make dinner and have this is the view I'm looking out at, and there's people just having a pleasant time. So this is Menaggio. I'd go into Menaggio. It was only 5 minute bike ride from the campground, so it was real accessible. But again, all these nice areas for pedestrians. There's not any cars here. Shops. Here would be ice cream store right here, and cafes and places where people stay probably for a couple €100 a night. Not part of my reality. This is my reality here. The guy had to find a place for me to put up my hammock, and I got a better place than just about anybody because I had to have a hammock. We had to move a dumpster out of the way so I could make room for my hammock. But this is where I stayed, and this is the lake back here, and I think it was like 12 or 13 euros a night, pretty inexpensive, a safe place to leave my stuff. Of course, I had showers and toilets, and I think maybe you could even wash clothes there. But these kind of cheesy little trailers that some people were in, and there are other people with camping vans. I saw some people come in one evening on bicycles. About 5 people came in on bikes late in the day, and they just got shoehorned in somewhere, but they had tents, but not very much privacy. So, but this was my space. I stayed here for, I think, 3 days, 3 nights, 4 days. This was a good spot. People were nice. So one day I took the ferry across the lake, and this is what you see going across the lake. This is it's just so beautiful. I just, it's green. Uh, it is walkable. You can see people walking along here. I'd be walking along there a little bit later. Just the landscaping, lots of these typical kind of Italian architecture. I went to a couple of the villas there. Some of them you might pay a little bit to go into, 5 or 6, 7 euros. Euro is about $1. Uh, but just look at this walkway right here. These are all oleanders. These are big oleanders. They don't grow that big in a place that gets very cold very often. You wouldn't see anything like this in Eugene, even though this is a good deal further north than Eugene. Um, so I just explored these villas um, right on the lake. Just this is why people come here, because it's just so beautiful. This is the lake. That's the well, let's see. This would be the west side of the lake. I think what this is looking north anyway. I think this is the west side of the lake. But these fountains and the statuary, it is just so beautiful. You could just like being heaven. And there's a little beach down here and places to walk and sit and just gaze at the scenery. It's so um, I like this kind of a place. So again, I had to wait a few minutes to take this picture with nobody there because there would be pretty women sort of posing for the camera right here. I had to wait my turn and took a quick picture before somebody else jumped in here to take a photo with their girlfriend. But who wouldn't want to have their photo taken in a place like this? This would have been where some rich person lived in years past, and now could be publicly owned or could be privately owned, but you pay a bit of money and go check out these places. This is inside one of those villas. Take a look at that furniture and this big tapestry right there. So I spent several hours just exploring these villas and these gardens and just enjoying being there. I had my bike with me too. So I biked to the next town, and I knew about this interesting sort of plunge pools right here and these gangways to access these plunge pools. So this was kind of a fun thing to do too. Um, I think at one point they had hooked up this water to generate electricity. I don't know if that's happening now or not, but just part of the geography of the area. You have these tall mountains right next to the lake, and the water's got to get down to the lake one way or another. So this is back at the campground, and there was this kind of a structure. I don't know what it was used for because it had a locked door, but I made good use of these posts to hang my hammock right there and look out over the lake in the late afternoon. I did that a couple of nights, and I might have had some food with me. I might have bought a beer and just watch the gathering darkness. One evening I was here, and off in the far distance there were some lightning flashes way off in the distance. That was just really exciting to see that. So this was a fellow who had one of those kind of a caravan near where my hammock was in the campground, and I had sort of talked with him a little bit. He was down on the beach with a big net, and he was catching these fish. And I'd asked him how was the fishing, because I saw him down there, and back in the campground, I said, how was the fishing? So he explained they was catching these fish with a net because they're spawning down there along the beach, and they're very small fish. But that's what this guy was doing with his friends, as they were catching fish with this big net. So after a few days, it was time to go. I took a ferry that went over across the lake and then back to Belaggio. So it did kind of, it went in one direction and then back to Belaggio, which is where I needed to go because that's where the road was that would take me to Lecco. And these are a couple of German guys, and they got their big motorcycles. I talked with them for quite a while. They were on a big bike adventure as well, really nice guys. And of course, other people on the ferry as well. And this is Lago Como and the mountains in the distance. So I got to Bellagio, and again, there's a Lungo Lago. I got off the ferry, and I'm just kind of getting my bearings and just sort of enjoying being in this new place. And uh, this guy walks up to me and starts talking to me in English, and his English was very good. He wasn't American, but he had extremely good English. But he said he had me not only identified as an American, but as an American from the West Coast, which was pretty funny. But it turns out that he had spent a little time in Eugene. He had spent time in Portland because for a number of years he worked for Nike. So he knows the area. He knew who the Oregon Ducks were, and just had some fun conversation of someone from Germany. Actually, he's German. His girlfriends are both from Germany, and but he was acquainted with Eugene. He had been in Eugene, and no doubt had a good acquaintance with the Northwest. And this is Lungo Lago there in Bellagio. Just for taking care of this. Anybody can go walk here, and it's shady. There's places to sit. I just love these public places. And of course, having the lake there like that, not every Italian town has something like this. This is for people to come and visit and enjoy being there. Well, I sure did. So I had to find my way out of Bellagio, and walking around, getting my way out of town, I just saw this view right here. It's quite up and down. Can you imagine? This is where you stay for a week or something like that. And then there's the lake out here, and of course there's a wine bar. It even says wine bar, uh, restaurants and cafes. Just such a nice place to be. Well, I found to leave Bellagio, it was a pretty good push of my bicycle up a fairly good amount of hillside. You can see the lake down here. I'm probably uh, 300 to 400 feet at least above the lake. I couldn't ride my bicycle that high, that steep. So I pushed my bike probably for a half an hour. This is somebody's backyard right here. And this is actually almost kind of suburban looking. You leave town here, and of course, there's people with larger properties on the edge of town. So what we just saw, that would be right here. There's Bellagio here. We went across the lake, and then to Bellagio, and then I rode my bike the rest of the way on this part of Lago Como to Lecco. And Lecco is there at the southeastern end of Lago Como. And I'm going to Lecco to take the train to Bergamo right there. So this is Lecco, and I'm looking, this is where I'd been. Bellagio, I think probably around probably on this point right here. And then Menaggio would be back behind there, and then Lago Como continuing on towards the north. Just beautiful. But this is the last I would see of Lago Como right here. I had somebody take my picture. I really like that scene, that photo right there. Once again, Lecco has a lungo lago, places to sit and enjoy the view. So I took the train to Bergamo. I had some contacts by way of Servas in Bergamo, and I met a woman met me at the train station, and she is a Servas, very much a Servas activist in Italy, and we walked around the in Bergamo. The old town is up on a hill. It took us a while to push my bike up the hill, and of course, this is all Renaissance. I'm sure this back here is 500 years old. All of this is really old. And so we did a little bit of looking around. This is inside one of those churches, just spectacular, beautiful to see what's inside some of these buildings. And we had some awesome ice cream as well. So I actually ended up staying with Cesare and Lorena right here, close to Bergamo. They weren't quite so close, but I stayed with Lorena and Cesare for about 3 days, and they were just really nice. They're Servas hosts as well, and they have kind of an interesting story. Actually, Lorena is from Mexico, and the way they met was that some years ago, Cesare was a spelunker, and he was in Mexico. They've got some awesome caves in Mexico, and they met spelunking in Mexico. And Lorena came to Italy to live with Cesare. So they had a family and are retired now. Cesare has also done like hang gliding. He's got a pretty colorful past in terms of sort of the type of recreation that some people would say, well, you're welcome to do that. You can tell me about it, but pretty spectacular types of pastimes with adventure activities like that. But we did a lot of hiking around. That's what we're doing this day. This was a little cluster of houses up in the hills, not too far from where they live. and there are actually some people living up here. It's kind of off the grid. And I just thought, this is just kind of rustic. And just as I got my camera up to take a picture, this guy steps out and looking out at me. And I kind of go, oh, hi. I didn't really intend to take a picture of him. And I kind of probably felt like I was intruding, because I kind of was, but I wasn't intending to be that way. But I still have the picture. But just in the hills up around where Lorena and Cesare live. And this is their place here. We looked at the computer, had some nice conversation. Lorena speaks very good English, Cesare a little bit, but we mostly spoke in Italian. And a nice apartment. And this is where we had our meals and a lot of conversation, just a lot of enjoyable time there. They were so nice. And here's this little kind of garden they made out on the grounds of their apartment. Of course, there are other people live in the apartment. It's not a big complex or anything like that, but they got in trouble for doing this. Most of the people who live there wanted just to have the grounds just grass, and Lorena and Cesare actually built this, and some people kind of didn't like it. They had a meeting of the people who live there and decided it was okay to keep it there, but some people who live there just want to have nothing but grass. So this was kind of a little bit of an act of maybe not intentional rebellion, but there could be garden beds out here, but they're not going to be doing that because most of the people don't want that. So one afternoon we went to visit these folks here, and they're also members of Servas, and we just had some nice cafe and some ice cream here just to make acquaintance here. This was actually within walking distance. This was really fun. So this is at the home of I forgot her name, darn it, but a woman who met me at the train station. I had to do a little bit of work on my bike. My rack was some of the welding had kind of come undone on my bike. So I'm doing a little bit of work in her garage right here. So that was helpful. I was able to repair that. And then from there, we went on to have a dinner with these other Servas people that evening. And this was just really fun, just lots of conversation. I tried to keep up as much as I could with my modest Italian, but several people speak English here too. But had just a really nice dinner here, and just making friends with some of the local people, just great. So one day we went for a hike, and this is what we did. We were here in Bergamo, and we drove up to here and went for a hike up here in these mountains. And interestingly, these mountains where we were hiking were kind of on the south side of where I was a week before on my bicycle. So here we are here, and here's mountains here, and this is the Adda River right here. So I was kind of able to see a little bit of what this looked like to the south of me right here. So there's a refuge up there. There's a restaurant there. You can buy some food, picnic tables. A lot of people just kind of hanging out up here. These people would have been driving supplies up there. You wouldn't drive a car up here unless you worked here. But this was pretty rustic, and a very nice hike. There were probably, this is all of our group right here. There must have been about 14 or 16 of us. And this is what the mountains look like up there. And this is a ridge way back here. It's just beautiful. It's just really beautiful. And it became time to leave. Here's Lorena and Cesare near their little garden right here. And they took me to the nearby train station. And we actually walked to the train station. I pushed my bicycle, and I went to Milano, and this is this famous shopping kind of gallery in Milano right here. This is look at this mosaics on the floor. This is a famous place in the center of Milano. Look at this uh, huge mural fresco maybe up here. I don't know if people are living in here. I don't know what, but this is kind of like would probably put Neiman Marcus to shame right here in terms of the expensive stuff, the jewelry, the fashion clothes. Uh, it's a shopping center, and I'm sure the building here is hundreds of years old. And then when you come out the far end, you see Il Duomo. This is the famous cathedral in Milano right here, and I really wanted to see this. Of course, it's a popular place. It's huge, big piazza right here. I took a few pictures and stayed for about an hour, but I had to go to the train because my next stop was going to be uh, towards Cinque Terre. So here is Milano here, and I'm taking the train back to Genoa, and then I go along. This is Liguria in Italy right here, and Cinque Terre is one of the most famous locations in Italy. These five small towns that are right along the shoreline here, and it's very steep, it's precipitous, and there's a hiking along Cinque Terre to visit these towns. I only visited a couple of them. It is beautiful. I camped out one night en route, and then the next day I went down uh, into one of the towns and started my hike. What I did is I couldn't really find a great place to leave my bike, so I just left it with some other bikes and my gear. I left a note on my bike that said, of course, I locked it, but I said, please leave my stuff alone. uh, Probably nobody even saw the note because nobody even noticed. But what I would do is to hike to this next town and take the train back to where my bike was. There's a train that goes through. There's lots of tunnels along here, and so uh, that's what my plan was. And this is just you hike up and down. There's lots of people too. This is a very popular place, and it's a pretty day. You've got plenty of company hiking. There's hundreds of people hiking along here. You kind of go down into you went from near Mediterranean level, and then you hike up and kind of go more or less along a contour, and then you go down to the next town. This is the town that was my destination right here. Forgot the name of this town, but the little beach here. Uh, these places are not a secret. There were lots of people. There were boats that could take you to this town if you didn't want to do the hike. But I kind of come down from the left here. I walked around down here. I went up here. I had a lunch, um, and yeah, this is down at ground level. I actually found a nice place in the shade. The previous picture would have been taken up here to the left, looking down. And then the train station was kind of back behind what you see all here. But I sat here in the shade for a while. There's a cafe right here. And I walked around some and just did some photos. I'll show a few photos. I just love scale, the steps, and then the container plants. Look at this right here. These are just kind of built into the rock right here. It's just it's just so pretty. And there are a lot of other pictures I'm not showing just because it would take forever. This is kind of on the far side from the previous photo. This is the beach down here, and I'm just kind of looking out over. Uh, can you imagine some of these um, balconies and these uh, places where people stay with all these wonderful views. This, of course, would be Bougainvillea here. This is actually the train line right here, actually. And this is the pathway coming down from the previous town. So this is where I was before. So somebody's got a really nice garden right here. And this would be some kind of citrus right here. And this is looking off from that same area, looking off on the other side. This is the Mediterranean, somebody's kind of nice place. Look at this, must be a cafe. So these towns of Cinque Terre just attract people just to come and enjoy being there, just because it's so dramatic. The Mediterranean, and then you have these cliffs, and it's just spectacular. So I I'm back to where I started, and there's my bike, and I am going to the train station to go on towards Livorno. Oh, this is actually back in that town. A little bit out of sequence right there. Yeah, people just people having a pleasant time. So I went to the train station and waiting for the train. They're fairly frequent. I didn't have very far to go. I made it past Pisa and then to Livorno. I thought I would just come into Livorno and get on the ferry and go to Corsica. Turns out I had to stay a night in Livorno because the ferry didn't leave until the next day. So I found a campground. It was like 15 miles out of Livorno, but I found a place there, put my hammock, took a shower, and had lunch or dinner actually on the beach right here. There's, of course, the Mediterranean, and this would be my last evening of my trip on the Italian mainland, because from here uh, I'm headed to Corsica. So the next morning I went back to where the ferry leaves, but I went through Livorno. Livorno is a big town, and this is a market right here. I made an awesome deal for some avocados. I was looking around these fruit stands and I saw some avocados in a box that weren't out front for selling. So I asked the guy, "What about these avocados? Che c'è con questi avocati?" I said, "What's the deal? With these avos?" And he said, they're too ripe. And I said, I'd be glad to take some. So I ended up getting like 5 nice sized avocados for €1, when usually they'd be over €1 a piece. So I had a lot of avocados for a couple of days. But this is just typical, just a big fruit and vegetable market here that's common. And yeah, and this is there's my bike right there, and this is the center part of Livorno, and I am gradually making my way towards the ferry. I actually bought a couple of big figs here. It was early in the season. These big figs were from southern Italy, where, of course, fig season begins sooner. I was really kind of disappointed. They were expensive, and also they didn't really even taste that good. I was those figs not nearly as good as many figs I've had here in Eugene on my own fig trees. Uh, I was disappointed in my fig experience in Europe. It really kind of didn't happen, but that wasn't the main reason I went. But here's Livorno, and uh, about an hour later, I am here. I've got my ticket, and we're just kind of waiting till it's time to load up with this ferry right here. That's the ferry. That's a car ferry. It takes cars and trucks. It's bigger, much bigger than on the lakes. Of course, there's my bike, and just waiting until it's time to load, and we'll be on our way to Corsica for a lot of bike riding and more adventure. So that is what I have for this episode. The next episode, we're going to take a look at Corsica on our way to Sardinia. But this was just so much fun. I love to describe the pictures and what happened during these adventures. Oh, I just quit the screen share. I'm still here. I haven't sort of transcended into another dimension. So I will just say thanks for watching, and we'll have another episode in a few weeks. Okay, good. Thanks. Bye.